So do you ever find yourself avoiding difficult or uncomfortable conversations because you're either afraid of hurting the other person or maybe speaking your mind? Or maybe you do have difficult conversations and they always end up in shouting matches or yelling matches, and people end up more angry and frustrated after the conversation than they did before. This could be either at work, with your family, in your personal life. The reality is that having difficult conversations and handling them well is a true trademark of any great leader or influencer. So in this week's mastery lesson, we're going to be reviewing a book called Crucial Conversations. I've distilled down the most important takeaways from the book. I'm going to be sharing them here with you in this video, not only so you can understand how to have better conversations, but you can handle them well. So stay tuned. Hey guys, it's Adam over at Teach You Freedom, and as you know, it is my mission to help you guys remove the mental and emotional barriers that are stopping you from achieving life on your terms, which is what we call freedom. And on this week's mastery lesson, we're going to be talking about a really important topic. It's a topic of having important or difficult conversations, and I'm going to be reviewing a book called Crucial Conversations that I just read. I'm going to be reviewing some of those big takeaways with you guys, and so I'm going to be jumping back and forth between some concepts from the book and why I think they're so important. Overall, I think that the book was really awesome. They did a good job bringing up some really key concepts, so I want to jump in that with you guys here today. So to kick things off, you might be asking yourself, well, what is a crucial conversation, or what is a high stakes conversation? And the definition in the book of a crucial conversation is where opinions vary, emotions run strong, and the stakes are high, right? Stakes meaning that somebody's job could be on the line, somebody's relationship could be on the line, there's a lot invested in the situation, and things need to go well. Now, the authors in the book point out that it's actually funny because in situations like this where the stakes are high and there's a lot riding on the conversation, we actually handle them much more poorly than we would any type of low grade or normal conversation, which I think is hilarious because this is the time where we need to perform best. And the reality is that the reason these conversations are so difficult to handle is because usually they come up out of nowhere, right? You don't have a layoff conversation out of the thin air, right? Or you don't have a difficult conversation that you're prepared for. Usually they just come out of the blue and you need to be ready and in the zone. The other interesting thing about crucial conversations is the fact that usually because emotions are running strong, you're in that fight or flight mode and emotions are running really heavy and your blood pressure's through the roof, and you're not really thinking about having a calm, collected conversation. You're thinking about running or fighting, which is why crucial conversations or difficult conversations are so important, and it's so important that we practice them and get a grip on how to handle them well, so when the situations do come up, we're ready to handle them. So why are crucial conversations so important, right? Why are we having this discussion? Why are conversations so important? The reality of the situation is our conversations have a direct impact on not only our personal lives, our lives at work, our lives in the community, our lives with our family. The quality of our conversations really dictate the quality of our relationships, and the quality of our relationships really impact the quality of our life, right? The research in the book shows that the quality of your relationships actually directly impact how happy you are in life. And if we can handle quality conversations or handle those conversations well, we can improve the quality of our relationships, thus improving the quality of our lives, which is why these are so important. I personally believe that relationships truly are the most important thing in life. They're really all that we have, our relationships with ourselves and our relationships with other people. So the better we can communicate with ourselves and other people, the better of a life we can culminate. So it's really important to be able to handle these conversations not only well, but effectively. So the next section of the book talks about how we can handle conversations, right? And the authors go on to say, usually we do one of three things when we handle a crucial conversation, right? One, we either avoid it completely, right? I know I was there for a long time where I didn't want to even have an important conversation because I was so terrified of the outcome, and that's where most of us live. Number two, most of us, if we are going to have the conversation, handle them poorly, right? We end up getting into a shouting match. We end up just shutting down and becoming silent and agreeing to whatever the other person says, and we don't really participate in the crucial conversation. And then there's option number three, handling them well, which is where we all want to migrate to, right? We all want to be able to have fantastic, influential, positive conversations with the people that we interact with and do it to a high degree. So that's what we're going to be striving for, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next couple minutes. All right, so the first key in having a crucial conversation is opening up the floor to dialogue, right? And what's dialogue? Well, dialogue really is the free flowing of information from both parties into a communal pool of dialogue, right? So free flowing exchange of ideas, thoughts, behaviors. I want you guys to think of a time where you walked into a conversation and the other person you were talking to did such a good job of opening up the space for you and creating a dialogue that you found yourself relaxed, at ease, and just sharing all your thoughts and feelings about whatever you guys were talking about, right? Instead of being closed down and silent or angry, that person opened you up and you were able to freely speak your mind without feeling like you were being judged or any negative consequences were going to come of it, right? As communicators in any critical conversation, this is what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a free flowing of meaning of dialogue, right? Where both parties are sharing freely. And what we want to do, instead of looking at conversation of a river that's just flowing one way, we want to think of it as a lake, and we're trying to get the other person who we're having a dialogue with to fill up that lake with as much as meaning as possible. Whatever it is, you want them sharing their thoughts, feelings, emotions. You want to fill that lake as much as possible. And that's what dialogue is. It's not a one-sided conversation. It's a general curiosity of how the other person feels and getting them to open up to talk about that. So that's step number one in having a critical conversation, is creating a dialogue instead of just a one-sided conversation. So step number two, okay, and I think this one is probably the most important takeaway from the whole book that I got that I want to share with you guys, and that's to create a shared pool of meaning, right? We talked about a pool of dialogue that we're filling with open conversation where people are speaking freely. Now what we want to fill that pool with meaning, right? By definition, a crucial conversation is one where opinions differ. And any good communicator, which is what we're all striving to be, want to be able to get the maximum meaning out of everybody involved in the conversation, whether it's just a one-on-one conversation with you and your spouse or your partner or a family member, or if it's a team meeting at work or a big setting. We want to be able to get every single meaning into the communal pool so we have the best facts and information, right? The death of any important conversation is too few people filling up the meaning and having a one-sided view of how things look, right? The most important thing we can do to have a better conversation is to fill that pool with as much meaning from varying opinions as possible. If you don't know what Judy and Paul think, over in accounting, how can you really make the best decision for the company with just one-sided information, right? If you want to make a decision about moving in with your spouse, but you don't know how that person feels, or moving in with your partner, and you don't know what that means to that person, and they're not contributing to the conversation, you can't make a quality decision unless there's a shared pool of meaning where everybody feels understood and everybody shared exactly their opinions and how they feel about things. So this is so crucial, because I think sometimes we just get so hyper-focused on what we want and we forget about what the group needs and the group wants. So sharing that, opening up that dialogue for a shared pool of meaning to get everybody's ideas and thoughts out there is probably the most critical thing we can do, because now we're working with the best information possible. We're not working with one-sided information. We're working with everybody's information. When everybody feels heard, when I care about you and you care about me, that's when better decisions can get made and better conversations can take place. A really cool takeaway from the book that I thought is really relevant to this is they talk about the shared pool of meaning is really equated to the group's IQ, right? The more meaning that goes into it, the higher the IQ. The deeper the lake gets, the better the decision that can be made. The shallower the pool, the lower the IQ, the shallower the pool, the less meaning that can go into it results in a lesser decision. So when you're thinking about trying to come up with the best decision possible, get as much meaning into the pool as possible, and the bigger the pool, the better outcome is going to be, both with the outcome of whatever you guys are talking about, but also the meaningfulness of the relationship or the conversation. So takeaway number 3 that I think is really important in the book is making sure that at all times as you're having the crucial or the difficult or the critical conversation is keeping an idea of what it is that you really want coming out of the conversation, right? What's the meaning behind the conversation, or what's the purpose of the conversation? Stay focused on what you really want. So many of us go into a conversation without really thinking about what we want, right? What's our outcome? Is my outcome here to win the conversation or prove that I'm smarter than the other person? Or is it to build a more cohesive work environment? Is it to have a deeper, more connected relationship with my partner? Is it to help create the best company on earth or provide the best tools and software to our clients by working together as a team, right? Keeping that at the forefront of your mind will help you stay away from getting rooted in just winning the conversation or proving something that's a win for yourself but not a win for the group, right? We want to stay rooted in a communal meaning and stay focused on what it is that we really want. I think the most important thing to keep in mind is an open mind when you're having crucial conversations, right? Sometimes we say that we want a better relationship with our partner, but we think it has to look a certain way, right? I want to have a better relationship with my partner, but only if they say yes to moving in with me, or only if we, get married at this time. The important thing to keep in mind is that sometimes we can get the meaning that we want and not have it look the exact way we thought it would, right? And that's part of having an open dialogue, sharing that pool of meaning, and being flexible on the route we take, but staying firm on the destination, which I think is super important in any conversation. All right, so let's talk about some of the pitfalls of a crucial conversation, because I think everybody knows it's probably easier to get detracted and have a bad conversation than it is to have a good one. So if we can better prepare ourselves by thinking about all the negative things that could happen in a conversation, we can prepare and then better handle them as they come up. So the biggest one that the book talks about that we see when people are having crucial conversation is making a fool's choice, right? And the fool's choice is either you fall into this mindset of I can only do one of two things. Either A, be completely respectful to the person and not hurt their feelings at all when I'm talking with them, and that means being silent or not speaking my full truth, not engaging in the dialogue or the shared pool of meaning, and just kind of staying silent, right? The other option is I have to be 100% truthful, and that means that I have to say whatever it is that I feel, regardless of hurting the other person's feeling. I just have to speak the truth, right? Jim's a complete asshole. Everybody was thinking it. I just was the one who had the balls to say it, right? And the reality is that we don't have to make a choice between just being completely truthful or completely respectful. We can actually be both truthful and respectful, which I think is the most important thing that we can do in a conversation, is be completely honest with somebody and not lie, but also be completely respectful and honor, their humanity as you're talking with them. And, making one of those out of the two is called the fool's choice, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. Be completely truthful and be completely respectful, and we're going to talk about some ways that you can do that. So when do conversations start going wrong, right? What's the first thing to notice when conversations take a turn for the worst, or people aren't opening up or responsive to opening up dialogue in a shared pool of meaning, right? You can't really get into that or crack that person open and get them to engage in the conversation. Well, the biggest barrier is usually a fear of safety, right? That person doesn't feel like they're safe enough to be able to engage in the dialogue or join in that shared pool of meaning, right? And add to the conversation. And when people don't feel safe, what they tend to do is either A, get silent, or B, get violent, right? You're in that fight or flight kind of stress response mode when you're having a difficult conversation. And you can notice this in people. If they tend to shut down and they're not saying anything, you can probably be sure that they're not really engaging in the conversation at the fullest level. Or B, if you notice somebody starting to get violent, irrational, or defending themselves, it's a telltale sign that they probably don't feel very safe in the conversation. So safety is a huge thing. We need to establish safety in any conversation, any critical conversation that we're having with people. And we can do that in two ways. Now, those two ways are A, establishing a common purpose, and B, establishing mutual respect, right? A mutual purpose and mutual respect. Those are the two best ways that we can establish safety with somebody and make them feel like we have their best interest in mind. So let's talk about the first one, mutual purpose, right? It's super important to establish a mutual purpose. Oftentimes we get into a conversation where we think the other person knows what we want and we think we're on the same page, but we don't actually say anything, right? And I can't really respect what you think unless I feel like you respect what I think, right? So the best way to establish mutual purpose is to share mutual purpose, right? When you feel heard, I feel heard, or vice versa. When you feel like I hear you, then I'm more willing to hear you on what you have to say, right? I think that makes sense. We can't expect somebody to agree with us or be willing to share with us unless we're willing to share with them. So I think one of the most important things we can start off is just by having a mutual purpose, right? And a mutual purpose really is rooted in genuine curiosity and caring from the other person. This isn't a technique. You can't fake having a mutual purpose, right? I can't fake having your best interest in mind in my conversation with you. I can't fake having a mutual or an outcome of wanting to help grow the greatest company without caring about the people invested in that company, right? So this isn't a technique. This is more of a general. When you're having crucial or critical conversations with people, the genuine investment in caring of that person is the most important step. And when I get curious and care enough about you to ask you what your outcomes are, that opens up the table for you to feel safer to engage in that dialogue and meeting with me. So step one to establishing safety is agree on a mutual purpose, right? If I tell you that, hey, my goal in this conversation is to strengthen the intimate relationship we have in our partnership, right? Chances are almost 9.9 times out of 10, the other person is going to be like, me too, right? I love you. I want to make sure this thing works out. I'm completely on board with you, right? It's often not the case where somebody's going to be like, hey, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm out of here, right? Or I don't think the same way, or this is temporary, whatever it might be, right? So by sharing and voicing it, it opens up the table for you to engage at a deeper level, or the group to engage at a deeper level, and be on the same page so that we can have a more productive conversation. So step number 2 into making sure that somebody feels safe in an open conversation or a group feels safe is mutual respect, right? And in the book, they talk about respect a lot like air, right? You don't notice anything wrong when it's there, but when it's not there, it's the only thing you can think about, right? It's the same thing with respect. If there's mutual respect and mutual rapport in the conversation, dialogue's gonna flow back and forth and you're gonna feel safe. But when you can tell somebody's looking down on you or hates your guts or really doesn't wanna be there, why would you give them the time of day, right? If they feel like the person doesn't respect you, that's a telltale sign that you don't wanna be vulnerable or like expose yourself, so you're just gonna cut yourself off from the conversation. So I think establishing mutual respect is super important, right? And the conversation always comes up is, well, how do I have a conversation with somebody who I don't respect, right? Well, on the surface, it might seem like that, right? It might seem like there's nothing that you have to respect. This person's a jerk, this person's, rude. And I can relate to this. I think we can all relate to this. We've all been in situations where we work with people who are difficult to work with, people who are angry, rude, don't give us the time of day. But the reality is that if we search hard enough, we can find something to respect about this person, right? Maybe they're the best at what they do at their job, right? Or they care deeply about the clients that they serve, or even just their basic humanity, right? We can respect that basic humanity and people that they're a living person with a family and maybe a spouse or kids or something along those sorts. We can respect that basic humanity, and that basic humanity deserves our respect. So when you're having trouble respecting somebody, the best way is just find something basic that you can respect about that person and communicate to that person. It might not be the asshole, who works with you or the guy who was rude to you last week during lunch, but you can respect something about the person you're engaging in a dialogue with in order to be able to effectively communicate with them. 2 takeaways here. Make sure that we are building a mutual purpose and building mutual respect in order to make the people that we're having a conversation with safe, feel safe, so that we can engage in a deeper dialogue and a deeper shared pool of meaning. All right, so for the fun stuff. So what do we do when things go wrong, right? What do we do when we've messed up and we had maybe a good dialogue going, but then things are taking a kind of a turn for the worst, right? A couple really important things that the books share that I really stand by that I think are super important. And the first thing is make sure you apologize when it's appropriate, right? There is nothing more sincere than a sincere apology, right? When you genuinely apologize, and instead of trying to save face or look good in other people's eyes, when you're genuinely a heartfelt apology, people respect that and people understand that we're all human, right? We all make mistakes. We all do something wrong. At the end of the day, if you can apologize and respect the other people around you enough to apologize and take the blame for that, people are more willing to move on and be able to accept that and work together with you. So, just an example from my daily life, I was on the conversation with somebody at work and completely, botched something, right? Completely didn't deliver on time, completely our fault. And I had no knowledge of it until I got on the phone call. So after being surprised in the phone call, I called the client back and I literally said, hey man, I got my face. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Here's what we're going to do to fix the problem, right? And just that validation and saying, I'm sorry. Here's what we're going to do are the 2 things that I think any great apology has, right? Hey, I'm sorry. This is my fault. I'm taking responsibility. And here's what we're going to do to fix it. That's the best way I think we can apologize. So when you're in a critical conversation with somebody or a crucial conversation with somebody and somebody brings up, hey, what you did was really fucked up, or hey, what you did really hurt my feelings, taking the first step by apologizing, acknowledging that it was your fault, and coming to terms with, here's what I want to do to fix that to you. And it starts with having this conversation. I think a sincere apology goes a long, long, long way. Sometimes other people might feel disrespected during your conversations, even though you didn't do anything that was disrespectful, and it's just because they misinterpreted your actions or your intent, right? So getting really clear and establishing safety again and saying, I'm sorry that it seemed like X, Y, and Z was my intent. Actually, this is my intent, and this is the shared meaning that we had for this conversation, and that was what I was keeping in mind, right? So let's say you're a CEO and people come to you and they say, hey, we just saw that, we're laying people off, but you just spent $150,000 on new office equipment, right? It seems like, maybe your priorities are mixed up. And making sure you get really clear that people aren't misunderstanding your intent. You say, I thought by building this new office, we were going to use it for marketing and have clients in so we could bring in more money and they could see what a great space we work in. I might have thought about that wrong, right? Apologize. I might have thought about that wrong. Let's review the budget and see, how much I really spent. and if that's going to actually be, a useful way to spend that money, right? I was actually intending it to be something that would bring in more money. I can see how that might be interpreted. Let me make sure my numbers are right and I'll get back to you, or something like that. So making sure that if people are questioning our intent, that we double down and share with them what our true intent was, so there's no misunderstanding. That way the mutual respect, the mutual purpose, and the mutual meaning are all shared again, and we can continue to have a productive dialogue now that everybody's on the same page. So man, did we cover a bunch bunch of stuff. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys liked or didn't like down in the comments below. If you guys want to see more content like this, we're dropping a video every week now on mastery lessons of both book reviews and just really cool video topics that we're going to be sharing to help you guys create freedom in your life. So until next time.